Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about the health benefits of medicinal mushrooms. I'm delighted to welcome special guest Krysta Francoeur. Krysta is the founder and CEO of Wild Remedies. You can reach Krysta and learn more about the products she offers at her website, wildremediesshop.com, and I'll include a link in the description. Welcome, Krysta. I'm so glad that you could join with me.
Thank you so much for having me, Linda.
I'm excited to be talking about all these wonderful things that you have created, and I can't wait to hear your story. And when I checked out your website and I was reading through all of the things, and I saw, you're using mushrooms and incorporating it in a beverage, and it's kind of these magic mushrooms. And I recently watched the documentary about the fantastic fungi, and I also kind of followed up with another thing on magic mushrooms. So I don't know a lot, but I'm just kind of tantalized by the possibilities. And I know you use the chaga mushrooms, and so I kind of looked that up. And I found this awesome article on Medical News Today about the research. I love it when you back it up with the scientific research about what these mushrooms can do. And it talks about how it can lower cholesterol and blood sugar levels. It's an antioxidant. It may prevent and even help to slow cancer. And it helps to reduce inflammation and improve the immune system. And I thought, dang, this is worth knowing more about. So I'm really excited for you to teach me today. And I would love first to hear your story of what is your journey? What brought you to this place where this became important?
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you brought up chaga because that was really the reason that I founded Wild Remedies. So I've been a designer for the past 14 years. I am a brand developer, designer of digital things, physical things, and I came upon the chaga mushroom about, maybe 6 years ago now. I was living overseas at the time in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, working for a company over there. And I had come home to Canada one summer, just for a couple of months for a little break. And at that point in my life, I was very interested in natural things and nutrition. My story kind of dates back to being a child and just chronically suffering with a lot of health issues my whole life. And I had managed to really improve just with my own research and learning more about nutrition and the importance of what we put into our bodies and how that affects us. And I kind of thought I knew all of, the little holistic tricks and stuff at that point. So I came home to Canada one summer, and my ex-business partner got in touch with me, and she said, "Oh, Krysta, I have this client and he has this really interesting product. He's looking for, some packaging design or something, and you should meet with him while you're in town." And I said, okay, sure, why not? So I met with this guy, and he started telling me about this chaga mushroom tea that he was brewing and selling at festivals. And then he started telling me about all of the health benefits. And I was like, wait, what? Are you serious? Like this stuff sounds miraculous. Like how have I never heard of this before? Because he was saying all of the things that you were saying and how it has the highest sorts of antioxidants on the planet and all of this stuff. And I was like, wow, okay, that's really interesting. And at that point in my life, I was also starting to consider that I wanted to create some sort of physical product of some sort. I didn't know what at that point. I was kind of thinking a beverage of some sort. So this was like really, really interesting to me. So I just kind of put a pin in that. And then a couple of days later, I was at a friend's house, and this topic of chaga mushrooms came up again. My friend had mentioned it, and she was like, yeah, this is really amazing natural remedy, and the First Nations have been using it for centuries. And I was like, that's so weird. Like, I just heard about this like 2 days ago. What? Okay. There's another little universal ping. And then a couple of days later, this all happened within like 1 week. So there is this really kind of auspicious place about 45 minutes from my hometown. It's called the Center of the Universe. And the story is that back in the 70s, an apprentice monk from San Francisco showed up at this location, and he performed a bunch of like energetic tests. and declared it like the Buddhist center of the universe on planet Earth. And ever since then, it's become kind of a hub for spiritual retreats and meditation retreats and things. It's a very auspicious place. And I had really kind of started getting into kind of spiritual and metaphysical things before I had moved overseas, and I hadn't had time to visit that spot, and I really wanted to. So I went up there with my parents, and it was really, really cool. It was beautiful up there. And the gentleman that owns the property took us on a tour, and he was, showing us all of the things and doing some meditations and, grounding, earthing, all of that. And at one point he's, kind of showing us stuff that you can eat, edible things in the forest. And he kind of stops and looks at me and he's like, "You ever heard of chaga?" And
Just
I was
out of the blue.
Okay, I think I got the message loud and clear here. This is something that I need to look into. And so that's exactly what I did when I got back home to Malaysia. I just started researching medicinal mushrooms. And at that time, there was only one company that was really doing anything with them, and that is the company Four Sigmatic, which is now a massive $80 million a year company. They've kind of paved the way for medicinal mushrooms to be used in products. Those guys are from Finland, and so traditionally medicinal mushrooms such as chaga are used quite regularly. For example, the chaga that we use in our products is a really potent extract sourced from Siberia. We do have chaga in Canada as well, but in Russia, they have been using it in their medicines for a very, very long time. And so they already have processors there that make really potent forms of it. And chaga is a conch, so it doesn't really look like a fleshy mushroom, but it's kind of like this brown, crusty sort of thing that grows on the side of birch trees. It's parasitic to birch trees. And what it does is it extracts nutrients from the birch tree, betulinic acid being one of them, and it's extremely, extremely high in antioxidants. And Russians have been using it, like they have it in their cough medicine. It's kind of like a folk medicine. It's very, very well known. It's also quite known in Nordic and Scandinavian countries as well. And even though we have it here in North America in many places, it's just kind of, become popularized in the past, half a decade, mostly due to some of these innovative companies that have come out and started using it. And also, we are now seeing a lot of research around medicinal mushrooms. So chaga is the one that I love all of them. Chaga is one that we use in our products, but there's also like lion's mane, which works to help boost your cognition. There's reishi, which helps with mood, and there's a whole bunch of them, but they're all essentially adaptogenic. And so adaptogenic products help bring balance to the body. So if you can be a little bit high on something, like say chaga really works on the immune system. So if you have some sort of discrepancies in your immune system, it can kind of help bring it back to balance. And I mean, I get that's the story of how I discovered chaga. And it really sparked my journey to kind of culminate all of my creative passions and funneled it all into creating this new product collection, which we just launched, which we call Magic Lattes. And it kind of blends beverage with supplement in a really unique sort of fashion that allows people to be really, really creative and up-level their daily rituals at home.
That's really cool. So I haven't tasted it yet. I think I'm going to order some products, but is it yummy? I mean, mushroom drink doesn't sound super delicious.
I know most people kind of freak out. It's so funny. I love doing like physical markets and stuff. We do a lot of stuff online, but it's so nice getting people to try these things. Before we had the Magic Lattes are much easier to get people to kind of come in and taste. But before, I just had this chaga mushroom tea. And as people were kind of coming by, I'd be like, "Hey, do you want to come and try some mushroom tea?" And people would be like, "Oh my goodness, no, that sounds terrible." And I'm like, no, it tastes really good. Chaga itself sort of tastes like, I kind of feel like it's like a mild vanilla little bit campfire tasting, to be honest, just on its
Really?
own. But it blends really nicely with other things, right? So like coffee flavors, chocolate flavors, just kind of like mask it. So our spiced chocolate magic latte has the chaga mushroom in it. So it's completely undetectable. It's just a creamy cacao, a little bit spicy with some black pepper. And our products are essentially powders that are meant to be mixed with a milk of choice to make like a creamy latte. You can do like water and sparkling water with some of them, but this chocolate one in particular is really good with something creamy. So we recommend like an oat milk or something like that, and you froth it up, and it's really yummy.
Wow. That is very clever. And then are you just supposed to take it every day or like when you're feeling ill, or is this part of your daily routine to just kind of keep things in balance and be healthy, that kind of a thing?
Yeah, so it all depends on the product. So our three products right now, we have a beauty potion, which is our glow formula. So that one, I would say to take, 2 to 3 times a week. It has an ingredient that I source from France called ceramicides, which is clinically proven to plump the skin. So it's more of a nutraceutical. It has a lot of other fruit extracts and stuff in there too, which makes it high dose vitamin C. It actually has like 95% of your daily vitamin C in every serving. And then we have our relaxation potion, which is, if you're feeling, unease during the afternoon, if your adrenals are struggling a little bit, or if you just want to have a really lovely ritual before you go to sleep, it has passion flower, chamomile, and lavender in it. And so it just kind of helps calm the body. And then with the spiced chocolate with the chaga, I do recommend that one every day. I have been taking chaga every day for the past probably 6 years, to be honest. And I have noticed a big difference. So, and it also depends too. So every body's different. And because adaptogens work to bring your body into balance, it will do different things for different people. I've had people come up to me and just tell me the most miraculous stories about chaga. It's unbelievable. Like people that have gone into like cancer remission, people who have had like, what did this one lady say? She had like wasn't a gallstone. I think it was a kidney stone. And she's like, yeah, I just started drinking all of this chaga tea and then it like dissolved. And I was like, okay, that's great. Those are really cool stories. We don't promote that, especially because we're not allowed to. But I've heard some really miraculous stuff. But for myself, what I've experienced is my immune system has definitely become more resilient. I used to travel a lot, and every time I got on a plane, every single time I got on a plane, I got sick. I constantly had like some sort of cold or flu or whatever. And it was obviously, it wasn't great. And when I started taking the chaga every day, that just stopped. Like I haven't been sick in 2 years, I'd say. And that's really good for me. Like there's some people that are like, I haven't been sick in 10 years. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, I don't know what kind of superhuman you are, but for the rest of us, like 2 years for me is like, that's mind blowing. So,
And I think you picked a pretty good 2 years because we've been doing the whole COVID thing. So it's a really good time to choose to be healthy if you can pick your choose. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now you mentioned that you struggled growing up with lots of illnesses. Can you share kind of what that was? I mean, have you noticed the mushrooms helping those kinds of things?
Yeah. And I mean, the mushrooms definitely help on a certain level. But a lot of what I'm really interested in studying right now kind of revolves around energy medicine. So I, still have a few lingering symptoms. I'd say I'm about 85% better, 90% better than what I used to be. And I got really bad at one point. So as a child, I had chronic tonsillitis, like chronic. I'd get it about 10 times a year.
Whoa.
The doctors would, nobody ever suggested that I have my tonsils removed until I was 23. At which point I had an absolutely horrifying traumatic surgery where they burnt like the side of my tongue, cauterizing the, like it was really, really, really painful. And I also suffered with severe clinical depression. I started getting panic attacks when I was about 16. I barely left my house for about a year. I had other strange infections. When I finally had the tonsils removed in my early 20s, other things started breaking down. I started gaining a ton of weight. I also didn't have very good nutrition habits at that point. I knew absolutely nothing about nutrition. But the depression was getting worse. The anxiety was getting worse. I had extreme pain and inflammation all throughout my body. It was hard to get out of bed, well, nearly impossible to get out of bed most days. I would have I would need to sleep like 4 hours, have these 4 hour naps in the afternoon. I was barely functioning, barely functioning. And I had a paradigm shift around nutrition. And so changing the food and, the physical surroundings, that sort of thing made a big difference. What made a really, really, really big difference was not something that I discovered until a couple of years ago, but that was eliminating gluten. Learning about gut health, leaky gut, that whole thing, discovered that gluten was the culprit for a lot of pretty much all of the anxiety and the depression. And now there's just a couple of little things that are hanging on. And I've been working with some intuitive medicine, shamans. And we have been kind of pinpointing the root cause of all of these issues. It's stuff that I haven't really been able to find through naturopathic or Western medicine. But they are showing me that the root cause is from some childhood trauma that revolves around the throat. So I'm going like, okay, so they're saying like this one woman, she speaks to my spirit guides and she's like, what I'm seeing is like these hands around your throat, like you weren't able to speak your truth. And this in turn created some imbalances in the throat chakra. So at the time it was, this tonsillitis that I was getting chronically. Tonsils were removed, but the emotional issues were not. And so that moved into the thyroid. And so now all of these other little things that are kind of hanging on, we're now realizing are stemmed from this piece. And so now I'm working on some internal things. There's a little bit of supplementation, but it really is more of like an emotional journey just to kind of like nip those last little things in the bud. And I'm literally going through that process right now, but I feel within, a few weeks that there's going to be a lot of movement on that. And I'm really looking forward to just feeling a lot lighter and just, being at a place in my life where I can just kind of say goodbye to all of those symptoms and things that I've experienced for such a long time. But I also feel that it was important for me to experience all of those things because I wouldn't have started a health food company if I hadn't have been sick, right?
It led you on your journey. And I love that truth can come from lots of different sources. And as you're talking about this emotional trauma and that took place in your past, and you're finding these ways to be able to uncover it. And I don't know if you're familiar with the book, The Body Keeps a Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. And I really appreciate that there is now a lot of scientific research to back up these types of things, that what we used to consider as psychosomatic, something where it is our mind and our body, this connection, where people used to think that meant basically you're a hypochondriac, there's nothing really wrong with you. And now it's no. Things that take place, our emotional health, our mental health, our traumas that we go through, they affect our bodies. They are stored in our bodies, and it creates physical illness. And when we try to keep these things kind of separate in these like little bento box, like our physical health is here and our emotional health is here and our mental health is here and our spiritual health is here, don't let them touch because it doesn't serve us. And as we allow ourselves to just kind of open our minds a little bit and to be able to kind of explore some of the possibilities, then I think it helps us to be able to find more solutions. And I love that part of your mission here is taking personal responsibility for your health and your well-being. Because when you're in a situation where you're struggling with just chronic illnesses, that can leave a person feeling very, very helpless. And so I'm proud of you for kind of, pulling up your bootstraps and saying, well, what can I do about this? So how did you decide that this was something that you were going to put in your hands and not just say, well, that's for like the doctors and the professionals, and I am just the subject who shows up? I mean, what was there any kind of something that made you think, actually, I have a say in my health and I have a vested interest in my health because I'm the one that suffers the consequences?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it has to do with just my personality. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't, I don't like working for other people. I question systems. I'm always looking for a better way. Is this really the right way that we should be doing this? Like, just because somebody says it's this way that, has some sort of credentials doesn't make them an authority, right? I've always been that type of person. And, I think like a lot of people that get into wellness, and especially like health food entrepreneurs, it's usually because we're creating products based off of our journeys of trying to, well, essentially entering into like the traditional Western medicine system, being failed over and over and over again and told that, well, we don't know, there's nothing we can do. I mean, I was on 8 prescriptions at one point, and they're just like, oh, so you have like all over body pain and you're sad. So that means that your clinical depression is really, really bad. And so you need extra antidepressants. Like, I think I was on 2 at one point. My diet was never addressed, and it was like, oh, well, you have, what was it, like GERD, and you need to take this medication. Oh, and you have like pain, so let's just throw some daily tramadol on top of all that. Like, I was like 23. It's just crazy. Never was like, nutrition or like, what's your emotional, world like what is your trauma background, that whole thing. And for me, it really was just that paradigm and understanding that there is another way. Like I always say that Netflix saved my life. I had watched a food documentary, like it was Forks Over Knives or Hungry for Change or one of those documentaries. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Like, we can change our physiology, not just by like, starving ourselves or low calorie or whatever, but also understanding that there are companies that are deliberately putting really gnarly things into our food, quote unquote food, for profit. And that is making us sick, right? And that to me was like whoa. I have like a kind of advocacy complex, I think, a little bit too. And to me, I was like, hey, that's not cool. But it was also like, hey, I don't actually eat a lot of like whole healthy foods. I need to revisit that. And that's what I dove into. I think I did like this crazy vegan cleanse for a month. And I did end up feeling much, much, much better, obviously, because I was eating junk before. And now I was eating like, raw juices and all of the things. And so that was kind of a good kickstart into all of it. It wasn't really sustainable for me, but that's kind of the story there.
Wow, that sounds like quite a journey. Isn't it fun that we can learn about things from so many different sources? Even something like Netflix and watching a documentary, watching a show can just kind of open our eyes a little bit. And that's kind of what we're doing today, is just to introduce some ideas and say, okay, listeners, let's open our eyes a little bit and look at the possibilities. I love that there's more than one right way to do things. And I think it's okay if, if all of these paths work, that I choose the one that I enjoy. And so I think that that's helpful. Not that we all have to go vegan or we all have to do this or that or the other. But I think if we keep looking, we're going to find something that matches what we feel comfortable with and is a true principle. Because I think the more we align with true principles, like you said, eating whole foods and these kinds of things, then we're naturally going to lead to better health, which I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the principle thing is really important. It's a very confusing landscape, right? There's all of these different diet philosophies and things out there. And
Totally.
Really all we need to do is just find pure water sources, eat organic whole foods that, if food shouldn't come in like, Cheez-It shapes and, all of these like odd things that, that taste really delicious because they're, modified to be that way. But just, yeah, sunshine, fresh air, remove toxin load, and that just makes such a big difference.
That is really cool. Now, I think finding purpose is also important to you. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yes, that is incredibly, incredibly important. I really feel that, happiness is found when we are able to find our purpose, right? Or our dharma. Dharma is essentially what you were meant to do in this lifetime. I feel that we all have come here for a mission, and that we have that purpose. And until we really align with that, I think a lot of people feel lost and unfulfilled. And I think being able to find that purpose kind of brings that sense of peace that really is kind of the underlying factor of just being happy and being content. It's peace, right? And, I came into my understanding of what my dharma is just by following the signs, recognizing those pretty big universal nudges I've had at times. And just really paying attention to my intuition and what feels good, what doesn't feel good. A lot of people kind of get stuck into that cycle of like, well, I went to school and I spent a whole bunch of money to do this career, and they really don't take the time to consider whether they actually like it or not, or whether it brings them fulfillment, or whether it's, helping or hindering other people or the environment. And, people, it's kind of a generational thing too. I feel like my generation, we've sort of been taught or been exposed to information at a little bit younger age where we're considering that a little bit earlier in life. But, my parents, for example, just kind of grind out the thing that they just were told that they should do without really considering whether it brings them any joy. And doing those types of things hinders your health, right? And in many different ways. It can manifest into all kinds of different illnesses when you are not feeling happy and fulfilled, or anxiety. We know that anxiety, what is like the root cause of 80% of all illness, right? Stress kills. So yeah, that's why purpose is incredibly important, not just for the fulfillment of your soul, but also for the health of your physical body.
And that is so true. And I have spoken with several people from around the world who have said a similar thing to what you have, where they had their education and what maybe was expected of their parents or of their culture or something, that this is what you're going to do for a career. Didn't want to do it, knew they didn't want to do it, and in some it made them physically sick, like hospitalized them, where they couldn't move, they couldn't do. And hearing these kinds of stories repeated here and here and here, it just brings that second witness and third witness and fourth, that these principles that you're talking about are true. That when our behavior is in alignment with our beliefs, our core mission, it brings us fulfillment and peace and joy. But it takes some courage to be able to step outside of the expectation and to follow that intuition and to do. So I applaud those people who are able to do that and get off that kind of rat wheel race thing and be able to be. So awesome. Well, Krysta, is there anything you want to make sure we cover today before we close?
Well, I don't think so. I think we went through all the things. That was actually, it was great. We got in a lot of things in half an hour. Usually I ramble on with my origin story for forever, but I was able to get it all out nice and concise today.
Well, thank you. And thank you for sharing with us today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Dr. Dennis Waitley. He said, "There are two primary choices in life: to accept conditions as they exist, or accept the responsibility for changing them." Today, I invite you to take responsibility for your health and for your life. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Linda's Corner, please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. I also invite you to check out my nonprofit, Hope for Healing, at the website hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free ebooks and other free resources to help increase happiness, build confidence and self-esteem, strengthen relationships, manage stress, and calm feelings of depression and anxiety. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, or Amazon bestseller, You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.